Hi, Baki community. My name is Kwenuitawah, also known as KT, founder and CEO of Baki Beauty, and your host here at the Baki Podcast. Karibuni to the Baki Podcast. Joining me in the studio today for today's topic are Lindsay and Nyashomba. Good afternoon to both of you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing our best.
You're doing your best, living your best life.
Yeah.
Amazing. So let me quickly share a little bit about Lindsay and Nyashomba. Lindsay and Nyashomba wear a multitude of hats, right? I think I can call them artists. They are activists. They are creatives. And they are also the co-founders of Free Minds Session. So I'll hand it over to you, Lindsay, to share a little bit about what does Free Minds mean to you, and then we'll have Nyashomba also share a little bit about what does Free Minds Session mean to you.
Right. So, first of all, I want to ask, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Yeah, because I feel like usually the host always asks that question, and you never really get a chance to ask how you're doing.
I'm doing very well.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better. I would say why Free Mind Sessions is important and why we feel like it's something that needs to happen is we feel like a lot of the times when it comes to a lot of progress, the machine behind progress is people who believe in a vision, right? And usually when people believe in a vision, it's because people have shared values.
Absolutely.
So where can people find a space where they can connect with other people based on shared values rather than how amazing your achievements are, you know? So we figured, why don't we create that space? Because that's what's missing in a lot of networking opportunities, is really how people connecting based off of their core values. And I feel like that's an important thing when it comes to also emphasizing your why behind what you do.
Absolutely.
And you're trying to connect with other people. So that's why I feel like Free Minds is important and why that space exists.
Awesome.
At least for now. It could change. But for now, that's literally for the last couple of years. I'm sure we'll get into that. That's been our driving force.
Amazing. Let's turn to Nyashomba. Nyashomba, you know, take us back, right, to the beginning, right? And Lindsay has shared the vision for what Free Minds is today and what Free Minds aims to be for the Free Minds community. Take us back to the beginning and help us understand the journey of how Free Minds got to where Free Minds is today.
The genesis of everything. The even Free Mind Sessions was never that to begin with, because as a fashion designer, as a trained fashion designer, I was in school at the time when all this sort of understanding of what I want to do, how I'm going to create an impact through clothing, right? So I created this fashion line in my third year of university, and it was a very unfortunate, tumultuous year because I had to repeat that year. I had to go back to school because the year before, like a couple of months before, I'd lost my dad. So going back into that was very like, okay, am I being given a second chance in life? Okay, let's do it. And at that time, I really thought, okay, how can I do this a different way? And so creating a fashion line, you know, the themes were around how can you tell a story, and then the idea of a free spirit, ethereal bohemia. Then fast forward, the project is done, and I'm thinking, we've spent 12 months on this thing. How can we still make an impact? And that's now how I started thinking and really meditating on how else we can create that space beyond just this clothing that I wanted people to feel comfortable, you know, feel like almost they had a superpower in which their body is not the only thing people are connecting with, it's their mind. And that ether that that ether we sort of think about in the universe and how we connect with each other beyond just this physical form. That's now I wanted us to create the session. And so that was the genesis of everything.
From fashion and liberation through fashion to now liberation of the mind.
Yes.
And I think liberation of the mind is a very interesting topic because everybody has a unique perspective on it.
Yeah.
And to pursue such a noble idea in partnership with someone else
Yeah.
also means the two of you need to be walking in lockstep.
Absolutely.
So what I would love for us to unpack is walk us through the journey of how the two of you came to be this unit
Yeah.
and how this plays in your partnership
Okay.
in leading Free Minds.
All right.
So if you could take us back, were you guys friends before you started working together?
I think it's best for me to start this part.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I always
Yes.
say
Okay. Is it because she leaves things out of the story?
No, it's not even because
why?
of that. It's because we started from a very interesting space.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while Nyashamba was in her third year and doing
Uh-huh.
all of this, we actually met backstage. At the time,
Uh-huh.
I just finished. I was in the middle of high school
Okay.
and going to uni, I think.
You know, it was the gap.
It was the gap, but I was working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? I was working for
So you were like in a gap year.
Yeah.
it feels like that, but I've also worked for a very, very long time. So I've been working since I was in high school, so I don't know.
Okay.
What could constitute as a gap year?
It could. And I was producing fashion shows at the time for a modeling agency that has since then dissolved.
Okay.
But it was one of the biggest modeling agencies here. And Nyashamba happened to have been working for a fashion house at the time. And I was running amok backstage, trying to get people on stage. And we had actually met then. And it turns out someone I was dating at the time or had dated, I was dating him.
Yeah.
Yes, so it gets personal.
Please, this is the space.
Personal. So
This is the space.
Someone I was dating at the time happened to have been one of her friends.
So you knew the person she was dating
Yeah.
And
prior to this meeting.
And she knew of me.
So
We had just
you
never
need to
met.
understand something. Lindsay is a force. Lindsay,
know.
her personality had already predestined herself. Is that the word? It had already come before you.
Yes.
By the time she introduced herself and said, "My name is Lindsay," I was like, "Oh my!"
You were like, you are the Lindsay.
You are the Lindsay. It has to be, because everything that I had learnt about her, because people in my circle were like, you need to meet Lindsay. And they had been saying this for a year because you were in Malaysia, right?
Yes.
At the time. And then you came back, and this is why you had this gap year.
There we
Right? You
go.
see? And then
Yes.
the people who are in Malaysia were in my school, in university, had done, design and everything, and then went to go to do now these courses in Malaysia, which were apparently very fascinating at the time. I don't know why there was a time everyone was in Malaysia.
It was cheap.
Yeah, but anyway, people kept saying, "Oh my God, Nyashamba, you need to meet Lindsay. Lindsay and you need to connect." Like for a whole year, this has been the conversation. I don't know on her camp if this was the case. Probably not.
It wasn't.
But it was like...
I didn't know Nyashamba existed until that day backstage. But,
But for
please continue.
me, I think I'm always a person of like that memory sticks until you meet the person and it's like, oh my Lord. I mean, how else can you put this but not the sheer God sent coins? Like, why is this? This is definitely God sent, because why else would I be working for a fashion house and then you happen to be producing that fashion show?
Yeah.
So that
Wow.
was our first meeting, and that was in 2012, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was 2013.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then fast forward, Free Minds now, this is 2016.
Wait, hold on. Before we get to the fast forward. So, all right. So let's get the story straight. So you had been hearing about Lindsay
Yes, for a year.
for a year,
Yeah.
but Lindsay had not been hearing about
No,
you.
no.
And Lindsay's a force to deal with. So, and so now, post this initial meeting,
Yes.
were you guys immediately now friends?
L-
Or did it take time for that relationship to build?
It took time, but it didn't take as much time as it may seem.
Yeah.
It was pretty instant because that day was actually a day of chaos.
Yeah.
We had run out of a model to wear a wedding gown. And somehow, in some way, Lindsay Obath was in a wedding gown, tripping down a runway. I didn't know how to model, didn't know how to do anything, but we needed to fill in
You needed to make
the
it happen.
spot. And I remember Nyashamba was so supportive.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
she was like, yeah.
because this was the grand finale.
It was the grand
Yeah.
finale
You
of the
see,
show.
Katie, the grand finale of these shows is that model was meant to. This was the gown of.
I was meant to, you wear the dress.
the dress,
of
and
the
then
fashion.
imagine the designer like that dress not going down the runway. Like that's just. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a disaster.
No, absolutely.
So Lindsay, with herself,
Stepped in.
decided.
Because who?
So you were directing the show, and
Yeah.
you stepped in to be a model in the
because
show.
all our models had already taken the makeup off. They had taken, or they were still in their gowns to do that final walk. And we realized we were one model short. So I tripped the whole way. I remember even at some point on the runway, I stopped. I took a breath. I looked at everyone and I was like, I don't know what you want me to do here, but I guess we have to keep it going.
So that's the foundation of
That's the
trust
foundation, yes.
that was built amongst
I
you.
really, if it was like having, if there's something like a meet cute in my eyes, I was already like, that's my friend. If you can go up on stage, make a fool of yourself, you have no idea what. I was like, I want to be friends with that
you.
person.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome.
Because
Awesome,
I don't
awesome.
take myself seriously.
Yeah.
You know this. So, yeah. So
Fair
that
enough.
was the genesis. And then it was like, I don't think, after that, obviously, there was the personal stuff, which we said that she was dating someone that I knew who happens to be also very good friends with a cousin of mine, who they went to school with each other. So we kept bumping into each other. Because also the creating scene in Nairobi is very small. You tend to meet a lot of people everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
So it's not very hard to like bump into Lindsay and people who are alike in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that we have the foundation of how you guys met and the genesis of what started building the trust in the friendship that you have.
Yeah.
Now take us through, how did that then translate into the birth of Free Minds and really bringing Free Minds to Nairobi?
Okay. Yeah, so this was now 2016. I'm done with the project, right? And then we have a 3-month break. We used to have a 3-month break during uni. And this was the time now I was like meditating, thinking about, okay, what can I do with this project other than the fashion part of it? Like I see something more than this. So I started like talking to a lot of people about, having a space that represented this fashion line, but in a space, in the storyline collaborating with this space. And a lot of times, people would sort of be like, that's a bit crazy. Like, why do you think people will want to come and like talk about their deepest, darkest parts of themselves?
That's true.
It's like, it doesn't make sense.
Especially with people they don't know.
Especially because most of the interactions with Nairobi, it's either you're in a place where you are putting on a facade in these networking nights where you have your business card, you're well put together, you're
Absolutely.
completely so polished that sometimes to me comes out like you're trying to hide something else. And then there's other parts. The extreme with Nairobi is now you go out for drinks. It's like a complete, end of the spectrum.
You're trying to reconcile the two people.
Thank
The
you.
person you met who was hyper professional, hyper put together, now with this person who has now let their guard down.
Let their guard down completely. But then also it's like, who are these people? So now I was like trying to meet in the middle, where it can allow you to like talk about these uncomfortable topics, but really still be yourself, because that is still who you are to the core. And when I was doing this research about, because in that moment I was also like, I can't do this alone. I need to think about the team behind this. And that's how I started putting together these departments. Like I knew if it's going to be an event, a session per se, there needs to be these different things like social media. There's going to be the person running the events, like coordination, implication, all that stuff. There needs to be a host. And then the major thing is curating that space that looks like home. So that people feel comfortable. And I started thinking, a head of decor. And that's now how Lindsay came into. A lot of times when I was talking to people, they were like, have you like thought about like contacting Lindsay and stuff like that? But then more so, I think I was just like had been awe of her work. So I was like, if this woman was able to put together a show to that capacity, this is quite small, So that's how I got her number. And I remember calling her and I was like out of like one of these meetings and I was like, I really want to, there's this thing I'm thinking about. and I want to do a pilot first, but before we do the actual. So the pilot was like sort of going to be like, you know, when you do a pilot episode, think about it. Just kind of run through and just see how it works, you know? And so she was like on board about it. It was like quick. It was like, yeah, for sure. Let's meet. Let's have a meeting. I think we met on the location of that pilot where we were going to think about where we were going to do the pilot. And then all the other individuals who unfortunately are not with the organization today for whatever reason were there present in that meeting. And then we just kicked it off.
So, sorry, just before you go a bit further, right?
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to turn to Lindsay and get your perspective on that conversation, right? So, just to recap, your decision-making process of deciding that Lindsay would be the right person to partner with on this project was, one, you had an experience of her work product.
Yeah.
You had an experience of her work ethic and her commitment, right? Where she was like, I'm not letting this show go to rubbish. If I have to wear a dress, I'm going to wear a dress, right? And so you saw her in action, which gave you the confidence that if you work with her, you know she will carry that same energy into whatever it is that you're doing.
Exactly.
Right? And so from your perspective, why were you so eager?
You know, that's a good question, because if I'm to give you one answer, I'd be lying to you. I think it's a combination of so many things. There was familiarity.
Okay.
It was one of those situations where I knew her because our circles had finally molded together.
Yep.
And I think the second thing would be, I'm someone who likes to be part of a process of something, especially if it looks promising. I can't lie. I think that's most people. When something is presented to you for you to be a part of, you kind of look at what are the variables, what are the options here, what is the likelihood of success, and sometimes you don't even see that far.
Yep.
But you're like, there's something about this thing that just feels good. And I liked the idea that people were just coming together and getting to know each other in a very different way.
So the idea inspired you
Yes.
to be like, I want to be part of this.
Absolutely. The minute I heard it, I knew I was in. Because I was like, I've never done something like this. Also just trying to conceptualize what that's going to look like, given my role at the time. How can I transform that space into something? Also, just for context, what I was doing professionally at the time, even I didn't know. Right? As Nyashomba had mentioned, I'd taken a gap year.
Okay.
And it wasn't really a gap year, because that gap year has lasted until 2025. You know? The gap year has lasted until 2025.
The gap year is still ongoing.
I went to Malaysia to study interior architecture, and I hated it. And I came back. I always knew I wanted to do something way more creative and tactile. So I said, I'm going to put my foot into any space I can get that will allow me to exercise that tactile muscle.
Yep.
And I found an opportunity that literally just fell on my lap when Yoshomba reached out to me. It felt good, and I just said, absolutely, let's
So
do
it was like the puzzle pieces came together with the idea.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned that there were other people at this initial meeting.
Yeah.
And so was it that the others, and at that time, was the language that you were using that we are all partners in this?
Yes.
Or was the language that you were using that I'm looking for a team to help me execute this?
Yeah. So at the time, this was the role in my mind kept morphing so much, because I was like, yes, I know I'm the woman with the vision. I'm the human with the vision.
Yep.
But the only way I can make this work is that there are some elements to this project that can't be executed by just me. So I have to play into people's strengths. So with Lindsay, I knew her strength was like making things with her hands and creating stuff from scratch. So that's why I was like, I feel like even at the time before we became founder, it was like I knew Lindsay would be head of deco. And then there was someone else who I just knew was good at taking the mic and just like getting people into a room. The sound of her voice was just, because I guess she was in voice acting, she's an actor, she lived in LA. She just had that, charisma with her. And then there was another lady in terms of digital strategy, social media, like that was her strong suit, like that. And then Lindsay came with someone else later in the process. And Lindsay came up later in the process because we were like, we need someone who is just very good at like the logistical, the finance. You know, when we were just thinking, not even financing because we didn't know how we were going to charge it back then, but just, you know, when you need to stay on top of things. And I sometimes as a creative just sometimes find myself distracted by various things.
Yeah.
So it kind of was like, yes, I want everybody doing things. I'm just the one, you know, kind of funneling everything from my ideas to these different, you know, people.
That's an interesting, and I think that's an interesting topic because I think you've introduced two ideas,
Yeah.
right? You've already introduced the idea that today, some of the people that started with you are still not on the journey today,
Yeah.
right? And one thing I want to unpack is with partnerships, right? Some people feel like when I start this journey with you, we must be attached to the hip till the day that we die.
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost like you approach the partnership from a space of like, this is a marriage and to death do us part. Right? And so then you end up being overly critical or overly formal in how you establish the partnership at the beginning. Whereas it sounds like in your case, it was almost informal and almost to an extent organic. Right?
Absolutely.
And so when you think about how then that impacted decision making in those early days, was it almost that you played to the strengths of each of the different people to be like, here's the overall picture of where I want us to go, but I'm going to give you space to make the decision of how you get us there? Or was it that the final decision always fell back on you who had the vision?
So in the beginning, it was like, that was, you know, it felt entirely on me to have to make those final decisions. And then we realized that it can't be sustainable because it halted people from almost like progressing on things. And yet we had, you know, time to do very huge things at the time to like at a short period.
Yep.
So that first pilot, I think, was a bit of a rough one because we felt like even our roles were sort of overlapping onto other people's roles because
Lack
of
of
that
clarity.
sort of, So it was inevitable that, you know, we found ourselves feeling that we could take over somebody's role if the ball was dropped, you know, because we needed to keep that ball roll. We needed to keep it moving, right? Until now, I had to make those like very concrete decisions at the time to be like, what's your role? What are you doing? How are you supposed to like interact with a certain, you know, degree, like certain department, or so to speak? Yeah.
So I think that's a really important leadership point, right? In that to scale a project, to scale an organization, to scale an idea, you need to, at some point, one, create clarity as to everyone's focus, number one.
Yeah.
And then number two, another good point from what you were saying is that the ability of an organization to scale also is reflective of the leader's ability to delegate and give trust to other people to be able to grow in their full potential.
Yeah.
And so I guess from your perspective, Lindsay, is coming into this vision,
Yeah.
right? How did you feel about that evolution of getting from that initial meeting you guys had for the pilot to getting to a place where now there started to be clarity around the different roles?
I think the one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is how difficult it is to get to that point. Because a lot of the time, you have 5 individuals who are really good at what they do.
Yep.
They work primarily alone.
Absolutely.
And now all these very strong, it's like making a soup with the strongest flavors and you put them together and you're expecting it to taste good.
Yep.
And yet, you know, you're putting them all at the beginning of making the meal. Yet they have their different points at which where they should be added to the pot.
Exactly.
Right? And I feel like when we had started, it felt a lot like and bless Nyashomba's soul. She has this really good way of making everyone feel heard and comfortable.
Absolutely.
But that can also be a detriment to to trying to move things forward, because if you're trying to take care of everyone's feelings and everyone's, opinions and everything, you kind of lose focus of what is the job that needs to be
get done.
And I think there was so much space for a lot of feelings and opinions and ideas amongst us as our initial group, that at some point I'm sure Nyashomba, she had to make that decision and be like, okay, we're butting heads here. We're butting heads here, and some things are just not working because maybe one person is seeing that someone else is slacking on something and they're stepping on the other person's toes. Because I want to get this work done.
Absolutely.
Also, we're not talking enough about how the turnover of trying to do an event monthly creates pressure. Because you're trying to churn out something that is just as good as the previous thing, and all these chefs are in the kitchen. And there's pressure and one person stepping on another person's toes, and we had quite a few blow-ups.
What was that pivotal one? What was the pivotal one?
There've been many.
Uh-huh.
At the time there were many, but I think there was a very pivotal one where, so the lady that used to be our social media manager, brilliant mind. If anything, I'm sure she's extremely successful in wherever she is right now. But there was a lot of how can I put this best? There was a lot of miscommunication happening. Okay. And she's the front of our communication. Because with our events, the communication is happening from social media.
Absolutely.
So this is the person that's letting the world know what it is that we're doing. We have set times for when this communication is to begin with our audience. And people were trying to design things, and people were trying to step on people's toes and everything. And I think at that point, Nyashomba, just because also the person that was doing our comms, we're all very outspoken, and she was a bit more. She had more of a sharper tongue than the rest of us, right? So once someone like that enters the equation, bombs away. It's bombs away. Everyone's frustrated. Everyone's pressure. Whoa. And now it's like, okay, there's side conversations happening on WhatsApp. Like, this one is saying XYZ. This one is saying ABC. And eventually Nyashomba was like, let's cut it out.
Yeah. And that was the first time I had to, I would say, fire someone.
Wow. Okay.
The conversation that one dreads, I think, is like having to sit one down and tell them, we no longer need your services. And then, like the other extent about us having the core team was that we had this extension team that was doing our technical bit. So all the, because we were creating a lot of the sets, like the sessions and the things from scratch, the technical team, as much as they were doing video and stills and stuff like that, they doubled also as our kazi ya mukono. Like they really helped us build those things. If you look at our initial videos, hey, we really transformed that space. You'd never believe that was something that we were starting from like 9 o'clock.
Wow.
To just create the ambience. Yeah, like from that scratch. So that point, what Lindsay is driving at was a lot of, how do you say? Tipping, topping, like more so like things were just getting slowly bottled until that bottle just said, yeah, we cannot deal with this anymore.
Yep.
And it started to realize that vision that I thought that everybody understood me, that I thought we were sort of seeing, when you think that everybody's seeing the same thing, that's now how it started to crack for me, that we are not all on the same page.
Yep.
Yeah, like it's not sinking in the same way I think it's sinking in for me.
I think also to add on to Nyashomba's, what Nyashomba is saying, it reached a point where, even as someone who, so by this point, I'm 10 toes in, right? But you also realize you can't make someone want something as much as you want it.
Absolutely.
You really, if they are not locked in, you will go to the water with that horse and you will speak in tongues and you will try and do so much to get this horse to drink that water, but the horse
is not drinking.
The mouth has been zipped. It's not boarding. And it's one of those things where you really need to make sure that you're checking in
Absolutely.
with your team all the
the
time,
time.
to just be like, do we feel equally passionate about this thing? And if so, of course, these are things we've learned along the way.
Absolutely.
But at the time, I don't think, people's ideas for what this would be or what this should be were coming in the way of what was actually happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like they're trying to they're trying to introduce their vision into something that's already in process.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, do we have space for it? And that creates friction. Yeah.
Yep. And I think one thing which you've mentioned, which I think is really critical point to unpack, right, about taking the horse to the water, but you can't force the horse to drink, right, speaks to there's this adage, right, by everybody knows Buffett, right, but Buffett's right hand man is a guy named Munger, right, and Munger used to say, show me the incentives and I'll show you people's behavior. Right.
One time.
And what's interesting is between the two of you, the incentive was passion to see a vision come to life.
Yes.
Right. But what you are pointing out is that not everybody in the team is always on that same page.
Absolutely.
And passion cannot be the motivator for everybody.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
would love to hear how were you motivating the rest of the team, right? Because we started this journey.
That's a good
You
question.
met.
Yeah.
We've not heard you guys talk about we raised money. We started the journey. We had an idea and we just started going.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people think when you have a project, I need to go raise money. I need to do blah, blah, blah. Right? And like you brought a team together, right? So how is this team motivated? Right? How did you keep the team motivated? And did that also play a role in people partying? Right? And how did you guys manage that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's
my.
such a good question.
I love this so much because now finally we're getting to the heart of it. Where now, honestly, sometimes I say, I don't know if it's just that, like I had, when you just say, like, I'm just going to use the fact that I'm a good person and I have good intentions. And that is what I led by. I was just like, look, this is all I have.
Yep.
This is the thing. I know it's not like going to put food on the table and things, but this is how I see it going. And with everyone I spoke to, I remember because I kept notes.
Yep.
And even before like this podcast, I went looking at those notes because I was like, God damn, I used to write so much when I was talking to people because I realized that if I don't keep referring to the reason I brought these people, it's going to all fall apart, One of the things that, was also scary was knowing how we eventually, I knew was how we're going to make this stable. Because we really didn't have a shilling to any of this, but we just knew that if we came together, the resources can come. We needed, one of the biggest things, and people don't talk about this enough, is how the venue for your event or your session or anything that you're trying to do really plays a critical and vital role in how that eventually that thing will come together.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful to Alchemist because shout out to them. The way in which I just said, this is what I want to do. And at the time, I think they were how do you say, they were just wanting something like that to come into their space because they were the venue for creatives, people just, not dilly-dallying in the sense, but just like walking in there and just having, those kind of, they wanted things like that to happen in their space. So when pitching to them that I wanted to do something like this was just right on their books with that one. Now with
Did you know that before you pitched them? So the same way you had an experience of Lindsay's work.
Yeah.
Did you know that Alchemist was looking for something?
No, I did not. And I was just like, gosh, you walk into a space and you look and you say, wow, I mean, this is oozing what the ethos of this community I'm building looks like. But then you just walk in there and it's all a matter of, honestly, what I've learned from this experience is that a lot of times it's like, yes, I know if I had the money would have probably been so much further. But truly it was like a classic case of necessity.
Is the mother of invention.
Is the mother of invention. Thank you.
Yeah,
because I really just made do with a network, with my experience with people, with the fact that I had goodwill, which is not something you buy in the street.
Nope.
And the fact that I had this project, that I had an actual project to show, to say this is the where I've led us to this. And then with the people, it's really about, again, really saying, look, this is your strength. A lot of the people we worked with were starting out. Like our technical team, they were really fresh. They had new equipment. They were ready to shoot something. So I took that and said, look, you have all this stuff. Use us, because there will be a time we will get to a point that now it's on your CV, and this is great because you guys are looking to do feature films and stuff like that, which I'm so glad, because now they always say that Free Minds was their foundation.
Was their path.
And then we just took it with that. And then it's really just maintaining that momentum with them. Obviously, after doing it for a year at Alchemist, now we started to realize, and Maki, we are not charging anything, like for people to come in and things like that. It's just a matter of, okay, how are we looking back at the sessions? Are we growing? Is it making sense? How is the feedback? And I'm glad that we always kept a record of all the people that came and the feedback choices. But that was really how I was cultivating the fact that people are really seeing how we are sort of, coming out of the soil and creating that community. That was all I was banking on at the time.
Wow.
I think to also add to what Nyashamba was saying, and to also add to your question, how did we stay motivated, right? I think you can only stay motivated when the idea of success is very clear. Because some people would say success is, okay, we're making money and want to reach X amount of money. I think in our case, the success is, how do people feel once they leave here? That was our success. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But that was our measure of success. And it takes a village.
Yep.
Right? It takes a village. And I think understanding that it's not about what you're getting financially out of this. It's more about you're creating a community from nothing.
Yep.
And it's going to take time. It's going to take, as Nyashamba was saying, being a good person, it's going to take all of the networks that you have. So even for us, I think another thing, and maybe I can just speak for myself, something that kept me motivated was the fact that I knew I have social power. I'm great at mingling. I'm a chameleon. I can change my skin in any space. And it may sound manipulative, but you have to have a certain level of charisma.
Yeah.
That it may even sound cocky. It may even sound cocky, but you're like, listen, I have invested in these friendships. I have invested in these networks. And you're just waiting for one day when you can cash out on them.
Yep.
It's not that that's at the back of your mind every
Nope.
time you're linking up or whatever, but somehow some people are put into your life for a reason.
Exactly.
It's always, no one is in your life for nothing.
Exactly.
Unless now you're also just being passive about it, When there's an intentionality, I want to be friends with this person. I just so happen to have all of these skills that are beneficial to what it is that we're trying to do.
Exactly.
Something that really motivated me was bringing all these people with all these skills together so that we can make people feel good.
Yep.
And feel like they're connecting.
Yep.
And I think another motivator that just kind of closes all of that off for me is seeing everyone else who we got on board realizing the vision in real time. Because once the session is done, we'd all sit down as well. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
We as we're sitting down, it's always like, wow, what a session. What a session. Do you remember what so-and-so said? Absolutely. That was mind-blowing. I didn't know so-and-so thought like that, etc., etc. It's just seeing how the impact of our sessions was not just for the people that we had, but for the people who were building it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that definitely was a key motivator.
Amazing. I think just to recap what both of you said, right? I think number one, goodwill is so critical.
Yeah.
And goodwill is done through building authentic relationships.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. You don't build the friendship being like, I'm waiting for the day to cash in. Right? You build the friendship because you're like, I appreciate being with you. And one day, as you are on that journey, right, the Lord will present an opportunity, right, for you guys to come together and build something beautiful. And I think that story resonates with me a lot because when we think about the Baki team, right? And I'll speak on some of the folks in the Baki team. I know they may feel a little shy about me speaking on them, but we'll start with the Baki leadership team, right? You take someone like Sophia. I met Sophia because I worked very closely with Diana at Jumia Kenya, and Diana happened to have worked with Sophia's husband in Jumia Ghana. And when her and her husband moved to Kenya, Sophia was looking for a new opportunity. And it was like the Lord brought it together, right? That I was looking to start something in beauty. She had a background in beauty. We sat down and it was like we were co-creating the idea in our first meeting at Art Cafe, right? And that is where it built from. So you see that goodwill I built with Diana led her to say, hey, I think Sophia could be a good fit for what you're looking for. Right? And you take someone like Ken, who's our head of product and engineering, right? Ken and I started working together at Good Life. And when I was leaving to build Baki, Ken was like, hey, so where are we going? What's next?
Yeah.
Right? And so, absolutely goodwill plays a lot,
Yeah.
right? In building these teams, especially in the early days when you don't have the money.
Yeah.
Right? And I love the other thing that you said, that the vision doesn't have to be fully built for someone to see before they jump in.
Yes.
But so long as there's that little spark,
Exactly.
the fire will be kindled
That's it.
as you execute.
That's it.
Right? So I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So I think an important thing for us to also touch on,
Yeah.
right, is as you are dealing with these battle scars,
Yep.
because these battle scars are real,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You are also having to be more introspective, right? Because we got some people with sharp tongues,
Oh, yeah.
but some of us we also have our own challenges,
Yes.
right? So help us understand, what are some of the sacrifices
Yeah.
and changes about yourself
Yeah.
that you've had to make on this journey to allow Free Minds to be what it is today?
Right. Do you want to start? Don't be shy now.
Oh my God.
You know why you're here.
I know why I'm here. It's just sometimes it's interesting because even with the letting go of people, because I was not the only person who let go. I mean, you're seeing the engine
We
now.
started off as 5.
We started
Yeah.
off as 5 people
Yeah.
who I thought the way you're saying, we thought we were going to be in a marriage for
Forever.
life.
Hey. And then life comes in like.
And then there was even a time we thought we would be the 3 of us, including another person,
Yeah.
who now it even just,
Yeah.
it was like someone just threw a monkey in there and just made the whole thing bad, because it was at that point where I really, as Nyashomba, needed to almost grow some sort of tough skin and really just not be constantly pushed around. And my weakness is that I tend to take it and let it be part of me. The negativity starts to seep in. It starts to make me feel like I'm also negative. And then it starts to make me lose focus on what the things I should be doing. And then I get, in my head, and then I, procrastinate or stall. The worst thing is actually I stall. So even what I'm meant to delegate, what I'm meant to give to the team, I can't. Because now the team is looking at Nyashomba and being like, she hasn't given us anything. We can't move, we can't do anything. So it's like things are,
Building up.
and yet we have a three week window between the sessions.
Yeah.
Around the time when things started to really get to me was my last year of uni, the last leg. I'll never forget that year, because that was the year now I had to let it all go. I had to say to Lindsay and the other party, who will not name, but say, hey guys, I'm on my last leg. I need to finish. And I remember telling myself, I need to finish, because I started Free Minds. I went back to school not knowing whether I'll even create Free Minds. Now I've created Free Minds, now I have to finish school. I mean, there's no way I can quit now. And so that required me to delegate. And I thought I was doing the right thing. Yes, at the time it felt like it. But then later, towards coming, towards my last legs of just saying, okay, I just need a final push. And it was like, we had started to charge a bit, the sessions. But all that money, I kept telling people, as much as we're charging the sessions, I think there are things that we're starting to think about for Free Minds, like the website, getting more structure in our in our organization that I think we should save all this money. And there was someone in charge of that. And this is where now everything cracked for me, because I thought me delegating, me not allowing, to carry this burden when I have a team to carry me through this time while I, finish this. And finding out that all that hard work has sort of been squandered.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Say
the
what?
typical topic.
The accounts are cleared.
Yeah, the account was cleared and everything. That to me, it morphed me into...
What?
Yes. And
That's mad.
That was mad. And can you imagine, this is like the last leg of me finishing uni.
Jesus.
Like, I just need to finish this and get to the point where, like, now we can fully dive into free minds, At least, the way you say the degrees for the parents. Maybe for me, I was doing it for myself.
Yeah.
I just needed this. And that was when I started to think, am I too trusting?
Yeah.
What can I do in
There's
terms
a lot of self-doubt that comes from
self-doubt, especially as a leader? Like, were you having some blind, what did you not see?
What did I miss?
What did I miss?
It's like when you're reevaluating a relationship
Absolutely.
that has gone left.
Absolutely.
And you're like, where were those red flags?
And that's exactly what it was.
And
Because as three ladies, we were pretty, like you said, that marriage.
like
we
this.
we were together.
We were together.
And then betrayal.
And then betrayal. And I think for me, betrayal in the sense of, remember Lindsay talked about emotions. Like, we were invested in emotions in Free Minds.
Absolutely.
Nothing monetary. You feel good. You know that you're safe. And then this breaks.
Yep.
And that for me, I remember because also part of it was like I was in a bit of a financial situation, needed to like borrow. And I was like, I need to borrow this cash. I know it's coming from Free Minds. Remember consulting with Lindsay, being like, this is just because I want, and as a loan to me as from Free Minds, in order to finish my project and be done with school.
Yep.
And all that, realizing now it opened a can of worms of, now we are experiencing betrayal in the company. Now we are not even sure of the people we are working with. It really made me to think, what have I been doing this whole time with this what have we been building? Like, if we can't even trust each other.
Yep, because the core of it is a safe space
Yes,
for
the team.
strangers to come.
Exactly.
And if the team doesn't feel safe with each other,
What are we doing?
how can you be creating safe spaces?
Exactly. So it really broke me. That weekend, I spent a majority of my time with Lindsay and her family, really almost just like pouring my heart out on the table, because I was like, guys, I've been building a community of vulnerability, safety, transparency. But our team is not reflective of any of this. Like, how are we supposed to move forward? How am I supposed to look people in the eye when they come to a session and that is what we talk about? I don't think I can do this. I remember, never forget, June of 2018. And it's funny, the irony is our session was about money management.
That's we found out 2 days to the session. 2 days to the session that our accounts are empty, and the session was on money management.
And money management. The irony. And I was like, by the way, can we shut this? Can we shut it down?
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore.
How can I come and tell you how to manage your money?
And for us,
and the money is zero.
Money, what? Who?
So that was for me really like, okay, as a leader, I look back at it and as someone who at the time taught me so much in order to deal with, systems to put in place in the company. And definitely who are you, like, be critical of the people you engage with in the company. Not to obviously, have this sort of a cloud over them and sort of, but really just be as, my naivety fell. To be honest, my naivety fell. At that point, I was like, damn.
Good intentions only take you so far.
Yep,
Listen.
And I'm just sometimes all about unicorns and bubbles most of the time. Because I always imagine that you give someone 100 points and that's how you deduct. But sometimes you just have to be very critical. And I think that was one of the best, funny enough, I say the worst and the best months of my life, because that's how I ended up asking Lindsay to be my co-founder. Because she was the only one who had stuck through all this mess.
And thin.
And that's how I ended up asking. Because I was like, Lindsay, it's just you and me now. It's really just you and me. And I think at this point you really earned it. If you are not working towards it, somehow you have earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow.
And
wow.
also just to kind of build on that, Nyashomba has very impressively shared her faults at the time, the naivety and all of that, etc. But I realized that's where our dynamic that we have now is built from. I think so. Right now, we have a good cop, bad cop dynamic, and I think it's very clear to see
Can I
who's
guess
the
who's the
good
bad
cop
cop?
and who's the bad cop. I'm the
Lindsay?
bad cop for sure. and
Don't you be trying to steal from Lindsay.
listen, don't even try. But I think it's also because having gone through all of that, and we're talking about being two female leaders, in a space and navigating our decisions, some hard decisions we had to make over time. Once you connect with someone authentically and you have a shared vision, you almost have to always look back at what makes this person spark. What is it about them that drew you to them? I never at any point wanted Nyashomba to be the bad cop. Nyashomba has brought a community together because of who she is authentically.
Exactly.
And things like what happened with us could easily damage that. It could taint it. Because of course now she's like, okay, I realized, I needed to, put my guard up and do all of that. And I, as a co-founder, I was like, absolutely not. People gravitate to the space that we have because of who you are as a person.
Exactly.
Everyone who wants to do things for you, the community we've built, the people that are doing all of these things, even as a leader, there's a way you hold space so people feel seen, And I was like, I need to protect that.
Amen. Amen.
I need to protect that, and that's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
So Nyashomba's strength needs to stay there, and let my strength also work here, so that now Nyashomba, with all of her good charm and just her good energy and her protective, very nurturing, I guess, abilities. Now it's interesting because of how we're able to now continue after that, because it's almost like she lures them in.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
she lures them in because she's just and it's authentic. It's not like we're here planning.
No.
We're there on a Friday twisting our
Put her in
mustaches.
a room and you
You know?
will see her just gravitate everywhere.
Exactly. Nyashomba she shines.
Yep.
And I'm just there in the background seeing, okay, her light has touched this one.
Yep.
Touched this one. Okay, now I need to go and also reinforce.
Yep. Yep.
So it's like I think we realize very quickly. One, we trust each other. We've been through the ringer, but it's also as two leaders of a company, also trying to exert ourselves as people who are running this thing. How can we both play to our strengths?
Yes.
And show people that people who have very opposing strengths and personalities can actually come together and find a good balance and make things work. And I think that's why we went from, because this happened maybe year 3, the incident happened in year 3 or year 2.
2016 to 2018, right?
2017.
2017.
So this was 18, year 3.
Year 3, and now we're on almost year 8.
Wow.
So it's literally from then on. I think we both had a wake up call. It was one of those situations where you have to really think, okay, eventually word may spread about what has happened.
Yep.
Are you going to show that you're beaten? No. So I think personally I went into protective mode, and it was like, okay, because when Nyashomba came over that day of the incident, I was like a mad woman. I was almost frothing at the mouth. I was so mad. I was so mad, and I was like, listen, we need to get this person. We need to get so involved.
Yeah.
I remember Nyashomba said, like, I can't believe it. I'm like, we need to get things going.
Emotions were high.
Emotions were so high.
Yeah.
But it was at that point that I realized it actually broke me to see Nyashomba like that. Her nature and what she is the reason Free Minds
Bubbly.
exists.
Yep.
It's that genuine connection that she brings. And that's the vision. We can't break that vision.
Yep.
So who is there to make sure that vision remains? And that's where bad cop comes in. That's where bad cop comes in.
I like that.
And
I like
that's
that.
literally been our dynamic ever since. So we learned valuable lessons, but I think it also helped us amplify how we view each other as two very different leaders working on the same thing.
Yeah. No, I think you've made a really, really critical point, because many times as leaders, you think about delegation as task or from a technical skills perspective, right? You're good with cameras, I'll give you cameras. You know, you're good with audio, I'll give you audio, right? But what you're referring to is also looking at delegation in terms of how do you handle situations that different personalities are better for,
Absolutely.
right? And being able to understand, right, which comes back to that trust element in that layer, right? That for a partnership to truly thrive, it requires that complete vulnerability, right? And I think in business, that is where people tend to draw the line, right? The fact that you felt, Nashomba, comfortable enough, right, to when this incident happened, right, it sounded almost like your immediate reaction was to go to Lindsay,
Yeah.
right? Because you knew that that was a safe space, right? Someone else could have said, is Lindsay also in on this?
That's true. It could have
Right?
easily been that. That could have
Someone
easily
else
been
could
the
have
case.
said that,
yeah.
right? And be like, no. I'm putting Lindsay out. I'm putting her outside of my safe space, outside of my inner circle, until I figure out that she's not guilty,
Yeah.
right? But it's clear that the trust was there so deep that you felt comfortable enough, safe enough to be able to come and be fully vulnerable. And I think that vulnerability is something that I think, unfortunately, a lot of people shy away from. And it sounds like the crux of your partnership is built on that vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's built on understanding each other, understanding where each person is strong, each person is
Absolutely.
weak,
Absolutely.
and saying your weaknesses are not a flaw is something that I can help you carry.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, wow, what amazing
And
lessons.
actually, you've said something that is literally why we do what we do. We want people to connect in a similar way.
Yeah.
That's why free mind sessions exist. Because you are going to go into business with someone. You'll go to all these networking events.
Yep.
You will see someone with their Sunday best. Wait, can I swear? I don't know if I can say, but anyway, talking out of their
Be your
butts.
authentic self.
Talking out of their ass. And literally just telling you what you want to hear and lathering you with all their achievements and you know how much they've grown and they've met their KPIs of the year and blah 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 blah, and all this sounds great.
Yeah.
It's probably very valid information that you need to see,
True.
okay, how do you measure your success, etc. But at the end of the day, if we're going to work together, we must have shared values, because when shit hits the fan, who's going to be around to make sure that everyone stays where they need to be and everyone's 10 toes down and we can figure all of this out together?
Yeah.
And that happens when you have shared values, because the shared values also happen to affect you, especially as a team or as people who are collaborating with each other. The shared values extend beyond the work.
Yep.
Because there's no partnership that you're creating that is just office based.
Nope.
You're gonna go for lunch. You're gonna go for some kind of bonding meeting or some team building. And the values, and I think even that's why a lot of companies do team buildings, because you're trying to reinforce your values onto the people that work for you.
Exactly.
But now
this is how we do things.
Exactly. But instead of trying to say, come to us and then we make you value this thing, we want people to find each other when they already value these things. Take out that whole thing of trying to cultivate that and find each other where they are. And be like, okay, I do XYZ, but really through this whole session that we've experienced, we've been able to figure out that, okay, I like your views on XYZ. And I feel like I share values with you on this thing. You could be a farmer and I could be someone who's in like finance. We may not necessarily see how we can collaborate right now.
Yep.
But if I know a guy that's retiring, that's trying to come up with something to do with his money, he has land, I'm going to call you.
Yep.
Because I know if I recommend you,
You'll take care of them.
you're going to take care of them, because
Yep.
we have shared values.
Exactly.
I've seen you beyond all the metrics and everything. So it's recognizing the value in other people and seeing, okay, even if they may have their weaknesses, our shared values are a lot stronger
Yep.
than that. And that's essentially, so when you were saying what you were saying, essentially we're literally speaking about the experience of a free minder during our events. You get to experience that and see the values.
Wow.
And that's something that's so important to us. And that's why we do what we do.
Wow. Baki community, I feel like we have just gone through a free mind session. Like,
And that's why she's
yeah.
our host, baby.
Exactly.
I went from decor to host.
Yeah. No,
host,
she set the stage for that.
I'm telling
So-
you, when she
so-
starts speaking like this, everyone
Yeah.
is like, oh, everyone could be in the toilet, but they're like, oh, I
Exactly.
need to go back.
Exactly. So, Baki community, please allow me to just recap some of the lessons from just this amazing session. Number one, vulnerability has to be your superpower for a partnership to work, right? If you do not have an atmosphere of vulnerability, trust will only go so far,
Yes.
right? Number two, right? Passion works as an incentive for some people,
Yep.
but not for everyone,
Absolutely.
right? And not everyone who's with you on day one will always be with you down the line. And that is okay. So I think super important to thank our amazing guests for the lessons that they've given us today. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you very much, Nyashomba. For more of the Baki podcasts, please check us out on our socials. That is BAKI_beauty. That's on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook, find us on X, find us on LinkedIn, right? And follow our YouTube channel as well. I'll also allow our guests to also shout out the socials. Where can we find Free Mind Sessions? Where can we find the two of you? Because even beyond Free Mind Sessions, we want to always be hearing your wisdom.
Yes.
So please shout out your socials.
All right. You can find. Should I do the Free Minds one?
Yeah.
Okay. You could find us at Free Mind Sessions. This is on Instagram at freemindsessions.ke on Instagram. That's our main platform. I would bring Twitter or X, but I think that's
If you want to also join our WhatsApp group and get all the updates.
yes. So we also have a WhatsApp group where we realized we want to be a bit more intimate with the people that want to get involved in our space. And if you just send us a DM on our Instagram page, we'll just get you involved. It's we're not a noisy group that you're going to have to mute. So don't worry about that, because I know those exist. And for myself as Lindsay, aside from being a Free Minds co-founder, I am an artist. And I also curate creative and artistic experiences. You can find my work at AH_THIS. At AH_THIS. Or you could just say Adis, because my second name is Adiambo, just in case you're wondering where that's from. But yes, please come find me, come chat, and I hope to see you on the socials.
Amazing. And you Nyashomba?
Oh yeah, so the funny thing about my social media. Anyway, so this is the camera, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So to find me, I'm on Instagram as green_violin. And also my other page, as much as I do Free Mind Sessions, I'm actually a trained fashion illustrator and an interior designer and an all-rounded creative, because creatives, we just don't do one thing. And then I also have another page called Design by Nyashomba. That is NYACOMBA. Nyashomba, not the way you say it and not the way you spell it. But yeah, we hope to connect with you guys very soon.
Thank you, Baki community, for joining us for this amazing episode 1. Please join me in thanking our incredible guests. First and foremost, Lindsay, we have an amazing gift for you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And Nyashomba, we also have something for you here.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. This is just a token of our appreciation for you dropping this wisdom on the Baki community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Baki community, please join me in thanking them.